super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart Farmcast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart Farmcast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. I hope you are doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add a touch of tradition to your life. The blueberries are ripening. Some are already ripe. We also have strawberries ripening. The varieties that we have are all everbearing, meaning they will bear fruit all summer long. That story and much more is coming right up. As always, I want to take a minute to welcome all the new listeners. Welcome back to the homestead-loving veterans. I appreciate you all so much. Your presence is appreciated. Let me know if there's something in particular you'd like to hear about. Is there a particular animal you want to know about, or one of our particular animals? What about cheesemaking? Do you want to know more about that? Or are you only interested in eating those great cheeses? Let me know. All right, let's do some homestead life updates. Starting with the Creamery. The new cheese cave is operating wonderfully. I put another couple of wheels of our Peaceful Heart Gold in there. That is a Danish style washed curd cheese. It would be similar to Havarti. I put a couple of those in there just a few days ago. And I can't tell you how wonderful it is to open that door and feel the nice cool air come rushing out, blowing across my cheeks. Rather than an upright freezer space, it is an entire room dedicated to housing our cheeses. And the cheeses are stored on wooden shelves. This is in keeping with traditional aging techniques. And then we go in there and we turn the cheeses, just pick them up, turn them over regularly to keep the interior moisture balanced. Right now, each of our cheese varieties, we have 4, has its own shelf. And only one side of the cheese cave is actually even being used right now. I can't tell you how freeing it is to have that many shelves to fill up and no worries about running out of space. We use an apparatus called a CoolBot to keep the room at the proper temperature. It fools the air conditioner into believing it needs to keep running. Normally, an air conditioner compressor is going to stop when the temperature gets down near 60 degrees. However, for cheese, we need it to be 50 to 55 degrees for most of the cheeses. And the CoolBot, again, fools the air conditioner, and then the compressor keeps running until the lower temperature is reached, and then it'll turn off. And it even has a Wi-Fi connection and an app that offers a graph of the temperature over time. So we're monitoring the temperature in that room all the time. It's a great invention. Just this little device with a regular window air conditioner, and it works great. The cost of a commercial cooling unit would be impossible for us to justify. And today, the humidifier was added. And I'll need to get an electronic and remote humidity monitoring setup in there, I think. As I said, we have one with a CoolBot for the temperature, but I'm going to look into something to monitor the humidity as well. Similarly, something that has Wi-Fi and an app so I can see, what the humidity is over time, what the humidity range is over time, so we can learn to moderate that. Now, the roof over the milking parlor is really moving along nicely. I can see how it is going to look now. Sometimes Scott explains to me how one thing or another is going to be done, and I really don't have any kind of visual in my mind about what all those words mean. But now I can see it, and it is amazing. It's so incredible to see this thing growing out of the ground. Let me talk about the quail chicks. Between Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, 52 quail chicks hatched out. We were amazed. Normally, it is expected that about 70% of the eggs of any given incubating group will hatch. That's considered a good hatch rate. Sometimes it's much less, but 52 out of 64, that far exceeded our expectations. We did lose one yesterday, so now we have 51. I am so excited about this great hatch. They are currently in the brooder where they will remain for the next 2 weeks. So it's just a small container that has food and water in it and has a light on it to keep them at 99 degrees. In the first week to 10 days, they will fully feather out and at least quadruple in size. It's unbelievable how quickly they grow. They eat a very high protein feed, and that helps with their growing. I mean, it's just so exciting. These little birds are fantastic to raise. And we've set up a cycle, and every 6 weeks we will hatch another batch. And this plan will go throughout the summer and into the early fall. We will have lots and lots of quail in the freezer by the end of the fall. And since we do not raise chickens yet, this will be our poultry supply for the winter. Now let me get on to the sheep, the lambs, the goats, and the kid. One kid, not kids. Yesterday, we brought the lambs and their moms up for their second spring health check. Springtime is when the internal parasites really take off. We have to keep a closer eye on them during this time, especially right around the birth, before and after the birthing time is when we do a couple of health checks in the spring. So everyone passed with flying colors. It's so good to see this. I can't tell you how good it is to see this. Homesteading has many challenges, and for us, learning about this parasite cycle was a hard lesson. We do our best to raise our animals as close to nature as possible. Their health is of paramount importance to us. So we try to stay away from chemicals. In 2010, when we began, that's 10 years ago, we were completely unaware of how vicious and fatal these internal parasites can be for our sheep and lambs. We watched in horror as a perfectly healthy lamb would succumb to them within days if we weren't watching closely. So we had what is a high worm load in our animals at that time. At one point, we were taking poop samples regularly to try and get a handle on the problem. Basically, we looked at their poop under a microscope and counted the number of eggs, and that gave us an idea about the number of parasites they carried, and if it was really high, then we would use a chemical wormer on them. There's another test where we look inside the lids of their eyes, and here we're looking for dark pink tissue. The lighter it is, the less blood they have, and the closer they are to imminent death. For the adults, it is dangerous when the eyelids are pale. For the lambs and the goat kids, it's often a death sentence. I've seen them go almost completely white within days. These internal parasites, they're blood-sucking parasites. And this is all pretty morbid. So let me get to the good part. We did begin to use a chemical wormer, and in the beginning, we used it often, 3 to 4 times per year. That was the standard for commercial operations. They just automatically worm 4 times a year. But we didn't want that. We were determined to use better animal husbandry practices to bring this under control. And when I say bring this under control, that is the mentality of most commercial sheep operations in a day-to-day. They want to keep it under control. For us, we wanted to gain control, and then using better pasturing techniques, we wanted the problem to be a small one, if not completely eliminated. And I mean, for the commercial operations, they would never think that was even possible. And I can't say I will ever be comfortable saying it is completely eliminated. We keep a check on them. Today, in the present time, we check them twice in the spring, as I said, and then once in late summer and once in the winter. And I cannot remember the last time we had to use a chemical wormer. I know it's been over a year. And when we do have to use a chemical, it's only on the select few who might need it, where when you're first trying to get control of it, everybody gets it 4 times a year just to knock those worms down. And we have progressed so far over these 10 years. So how did we accomplish this? Good pasture rotation was key for us. One of the problems we ran into that cost us a lot of lambs and even a goat or two was a drought that reduced our pasture grass. The grass was far too. We had too many animals on and too little grass, and so the grass was far too short. And again, this was the early days. We were uneducated novices. As the animals grazed, they were clipping that grass way too close to the ground, where the hatched larvae didn't have to climb very far up the grass to be eaten. And that's what happens. I talked about that in a previous podcast, where the eggs are kind of pooped out, and then the larvae hatches and it crawls up the grass, and it has to have moisture, so it's only going to go so far up that grass. And if the grass is really short, of course, it doesn't have to go very far, and they're going to get eaten, and then the larvae go in, they become adults, they lay eggs, and so on. And the cycle continues. So today, Scott manages this very, very well. He knows exactly how high the grass needs to be before we let any of the animals graze in a particular pasture. And he knows when it is time to move them to the next paddock. And so then a paddock will have the one that they left will be just sitting there with no animals on it for an extensive amount of time. And he knows exactly how long before they can get back on that pasture, and that causes a lot of those eggs to just die off, all the larvae to die off, because they don't have a host to get to. So you keep the parasites down in the pastures, and then they don't keep getting eaten and keep multiplying. And so the result is a health check like we had yesterday. And the health check we had a couple of months ago, just prior to the first lambing. Everyone was doing well. No issues with parasites. The one during the winter, the one during the fall, all of those, we used no wormer. And I don't know if we used wormer in the spring last year at all either. It seems like such a long time since we've used it on any wormer. Let me... So... One small side note on this health check of the whole procedure. Along with the sheep and their lambs, we brought up the one renegade goat and her kid because we do not want any more mistakes with unauthorized goat breeding. This goat kid needed to be banded. It's a boy, so it's a relatively simple procedure that causes the blood circulation to be cut off to his testicles. So we tended him first, and that went off without a hitch. Then Scott picked up each lamb and checked their health and banded the 3 boys in that group also. And then next, all of the big girls were checked and all done, right? Let's get them all back into the field. Only one problem. Sometime during all of the hubbub, the goat kid disappeared. He was just gone. But I've said this before. Goat. There's no keeping a goat in when they don't want to be kept in. We looked and looked and could not find him. It was unusual that he would leave his mom. I followed his mom all the way back to the pasture in which they were currently residing. I followed her all the way to the back of that pasture until I lost her in the woods, and he never showed up. So I walked all the way back to the corral area. I checked the other 2 adjacent pastures. No sign of him. Those goat kids are sneaky and can hide most effectively. Well, I had exhausted myself walking up and down those hills, likely well over a mile, and it was hot. I gave up. He's 3 months old and can make it on his own if need be. He's old enough to be weaned, really, after all, so I let it be for the night. Sure enough, this morning when Scott went out to get the cows, there he was, back with his mom. All's well that ends well. But he really took me for a ride. I worry about them, but he really was fine. Now the cows and the calves, I have just a short note on the cows and the calves. The cows are still doing their thing. That means they eat, drink, and sleep. Occasionally they'll offer up a couple of moos. Mostly they eat and then lay around chewing their cud. But the calves managed to get into the travel lane and all the way up to the milking shed. Now, we still don't know if the gate was accidentally left ajar or if they worked it loose. No matter, they are back in their corner of our world, happily grazing and running around in the grass. Well, Wendell runs around a lot. Luna, not so much. Wendell's only a couple months old. He still has a lot of vim and vigor going on. Now, let me get to the fruit. The blackberries are in full bloom. I mentioned they were blooming last week, but they're just like covered with white blooms right now. It'll be another month before we reap that harvest. The mulberry trees are blooming. The elderberries are blooming. That fruit will not be ready until much later this year, closer to fall. I haven't seen any kiwis, but the vines are doing very well. We have a few peaches coming along. I didn't see any pears or apples, and that is not to say they're not there. I did not look at every single tree. I looked at them in passing as I went to the blueberry patch. As I said, the blueberries are ripening. This is blueberry seasoning right now. June blueberries, July blackberries, right? So we have a couple of rows of blueberry bushes, and there are several different varieties. Most of them still need to ripen, but one variety was ready to go, and I went out there with a basket, of course, just in case. However, my basket was not big enough. There were so many of the early variety that were ripe, and they were big. I quickly filled that little basket. It held more than a pint, but a little less than a quart. You see, I wasn't really expecting there to be that many blueberries, so I was pleasantly surprised. I could have picked more, but again, it was full. I carried the little basket filled with blue jewels back up to the milking shed where Scott was still milking the cows. He was pleasantly surprised also, and he grabbed a bunch of them and proceeded to enjoy their sweet loveliness. Not only did he enjoy them, but Daisy, the donkey, got a turn too. Daisy is our eldest miniature donkey. She came up for her usual scratches and hugs, and after I provided those, I offered her a blueberry. And it took her a minute to figure out that it was a treat. She'd never had them before. She's had carrots and apples, but never blueberries. It didn't take her long to come looking for more, and more, and more, and more. Her daughter, Coco, also came forward for her scratches, but she was not catching on to the treat I was offering her. Plus, because Daisy had caught on, she kept pushing her muzzle into my hand and stealing the berries I was offering Coco. After a while, I gave up on Coco. I gave a few more to Daisy. She loved them. On my way back to the house, still having a nearly full basket of blueberries, I stopped by the garden to check on the strawberries. Why not? Sure enough, I brought a handful of those as well. I put some of the blueberries in my yogurt. What a treat that was. Later, or it might have been the next day. Maybe I think it was the next day. I put some of the strawberries in a dish and I poured fresh raw milk cream over them. That was even better. Yum, yum. I just cut up those berries a little bit and the juice got in there so the cream turned pink. Oh, it was so, so good. Now the garden is doing fantastic. I still have some plants to get out there, but the ones I already planted are just catching on and steadily branching out. I noticed a small sweet banana pepper already growing. It was about 2 inches long, maybe. And the others are blooming up a storm. The bees are having a time out there. Between them and between the peppers and the blackberries, we got lots of blooms going on out there. We have about 100 square feet of potatoes planted, and they are getting really big. The plants are getting really big. Potatoes was the first thing we planted. I was not sure that any plants would come up. I was using potatoes we had grown last year as seed potatoes. So they did come up, and I'm happy about that. The next big hurdle there will be whether they are healthy all the way through to harvest. See, the problem with replanting your potatoes is that they are subject to all kinds of destructive molds. We shall see. We shall see. Our soil is really good. Scott put fresh, clean compost in all of the beds, so fingers crossed that those potatoes do well. Now, the cicadas, what began as a novelty that happens only once every 17 years has now become mostly an annoyance. Night and day, day and night, they go on and on and on. I mean, they'll crescendo up really loud, and then it'll fade back a little bit, then it gets really loud again. I can hear it clearly through my earbuds, even though they are tightly fitted into my ears. Not only that, but the life cycle for many of the adults has reached its end. There are dozens and dozens lying dead all over the place. Now the birds and the cat are loving that. They're getting fat and sassy, but I don't find it quite so attractive. In another week or two it'll be over, not to be seen or heard again until 2037. Amazing, huh? My final thoughts. I love my life here and wouldn't trade it for the world. It's hard work. It's sweaty work. Sometimes it's frustrating and heartbreaking. Many, many times it's peace and tranquility. Except for those cicadas. I'm so done with them. The fresh fruit's coming in. Soon vegetables will be arriving. Cheese making is progressing. I'm getting better and better with my methods. That creamery that rose out of the ground over 3 years ago is getting closer and closer to completion. I couldn't ask for more in my life. I'm so happy you came along for the ride around the homestead. I look forward to bringing you more stories next time. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hop over to Apple Podcasts and subscribe there. Give me a 5-star rating and review. It helps so much with the algorithms and putting it in front of more and more people. Also, please share it with any friends or family who might be interested in this type of content. That is the absolute best way to help this information get out there and to grow this channel. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.